A couple of things I'd like to go over before we get started is that I'm making this gumbo in an RV, and that's going to make a big difference in my cook time because you can see the size difference of my burner versus my pan. What you have is going to be quite a bit different. Whether you're using gas or electric, it will probably cut your time in half on how long it's going to take you to make the roux. Also, please be careful. You are dealing with hot oil. So with that being said, let's start cooking Cajun style. A lot of people have asked me for this recipe, and I'm going to be honest with you, there's really not a recipe. As with most Cajun cooking, but especially gumbo, you can make gumbo so many different ways. But I'm going to show you how I make it, and I have two. I'm making a double batch here today, but I'm going to show you how to make a small batch so you can do this at home very easily. This is what's called the Trinity, which is onion, bell pepper, celery. That's the base of almost all Cajun cooking. Trinity goes in pretty much everything. 2 ribs of celery, approximately 1 bell pepper, and about 1/2 onion to 1 onion. I love using bone broth. It's my preferred, but I have both today. And this is where all your flavor is going to come from when you're making the roux. It's good to have everything sliced up before you start to make your roux because you really have to watch it. You have to stir it constantly and make sure that it doesn't burn, because if you burn your roux, you have to throw it out. It's no good. You can taste it through the whole gumbo. The other thing that I was going to go over is the other ingredients that we're going to use in the gumbo. I'm making just a shrimp and sausage gumbo. Now, a lot of people, like I already mentioned, like to use bunches of different kinds in there. They like to add chicken or bologna or crab or any other kind of thing. But for this particular recipe, what I'm using is an andouille sausage. Now, you can find that usually at a grocery store. Some of them are better than others. The one that I have, we purchased at West We Go Market in New Orleans. They have the best andouille sausage I've ever eaten. So we bought some and we shrink wrapped it and put it in the freezer.
We bought more than some.
Yeah. Also, I'm using fresh shrimp. This is, I have the blessing of having fresh shrimp from family off of shrimp boats down the bayou. This actually came from my cousin down there, and this is really small shrimp. I like to use about a medium shrimp, but this one is going to be, this is what they consider small, usually what they put in like a shrimp salad or something like that. And I'm using this because I'm making such a large batch of it, and I want to have shrimp in every bite. I'm going to show you how to make it, how to watch specifically what color we're looking for, and that's also another thing. People vary. Some people like to have a really dark roux. Some people like a lighter roux. Personally, I like a really dark roux, so I'm going to show you how to make it where it's almost a dark chocolate color. Okay, so another variation of making gumbo is the type of oil that you use. Now, my mom used to make it with only butter, and butter adds a really good flavor, but it's also really quick to burn the roux. You have to watch it really closely. It's probably my preferred method is to use butter, but today I'm going to use some vegetable oil. And the reason I'm going to use vegetable oil is because it's a lot easier to control your roux and keeping it just where you want it. It's also a more affordable way to go, just in case your roux gets wrecked. So what I use is about 1 cup of vegetable oil and slightly less than a cup of flour. Now you're going to turn your heat on, and you don't want it to be too hot. So I'm going to show you about where I'm at with the flame. I want it to be right about there. You don't want it to be too high because it'll go really quick with burning. So you're going to dump in your oil, and then dump in your flour. Now this is the part that you need to be prepared to not step away from your pan. Okay, make sure that everything is done and you don't need to step away from your pan for any reason. So you get this all stirred in, get it mixed up well. And it's going to look somewhat like a slurry. It's going to look liquidy. You want to get all those chunks out with the flour. Now from this point, I'm not going to have the video on the whole time this roux is cooking because it can take up to about 15 minutes to 20 minutes depending. I like to slowly brown my roux. I think it makes a difference in the flavor. Some people like to brown it a little bit quicker, but I think the slow route makes a better flavor myself. So right now, here's the color that we have. It's a very light, almost milky color. And what I'm looking for is a dark chocolate color. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes. Hasn't changed a whole lot in color. One thing that I want to point out is that the spoon that you use needs to be something where you can scrape the bottom. Can you see that? How it's scraping the bottom clean? Because as this cooks, the flour will kind of settle down to the bottom of the pan, and that's where your burning can come in. So you need to make sure you have something that scrapes the bottom of the pan. Can you see all that? To make sure it's scraped clean.
Okay, we are coming up. Yep, we are on 20 minutes now that she's been working this roux.
Now I will say that this color right here, this is kind of a caramel color. If I were making an étouffée, this is pretty close to where I would stop with the color.
Okay, and then one thing I want to point out as well is when she stops with that stirring, you can see that it's not bubbling and it's not boiling. So that's a really good thing to know, that it does not need to be bubbling, boiling. If it is, it's too hot.
Yeah.
This is slow, low, and that just brings perfection, right?
Yes, the roux is it's the one part that takes the most amount of time, and it's where all your flavor comes from. Really, this is right here. From this point, once your roux is done, you can do anything you want to with the gumbo. Put any kind of meats, whatever, any kind of seasoning. But right here, this is what makes the gumbo, is the roux.
Okay. So we are 2 minutes shy of 30 minutes.
This point right here, you can stop making your roux at any point from this color on. I do prefer it a little bit darker. You really have to pay close attention to it from this point because it really starts to brown quickly. So this color here is like a milk chocolate, and it's a decent flavor to your gumbo, so you can stop here. Another thing I'd like to point out is if you start seeing smoke coming from your roux, turn down your heat.
Okay, I want you to see this color, and she says she's satisfied with it, and we are 1 minute shy of 40 minutes stir time now.
Took longer than I originally said, but I like low and slow, and like I said, I like a darker roux.
Okay, remember this is a double batch, so this is the Trinity that she said.
One of my favorite parts. It smells so good. Now, the Trinity cools the roux and stops it from cooking. So you don't have to worry about it burning from this point. Now you do want to stir this in really good, and you're going to let this cook until your veggies are tender, and then you're going to add in broth. Oh, it's a beautiful color. Look at that. Now you do not have to stir this as often as you do whenever you're cooking the roux, but you do need to make sure it's not sticky. See how it's a dark color, almost like a gravy? That's delicious.
And about 5 minutes of that cook time on that vegetable, the Trinity.
As you can see, it's gotten a little bit thicker in there. Now, again, there's really no recipe. I'm just going to pour in the broth.
Are you going to use the whole entire thing?
Probably.
Oh.
Yep, looks like I'm going to use the whole thing.
So to give you an idea, that is 32 ounces. 32 ounces of bone broth.
We're going to get this stirred
Chicken.
in and mixed well. It's really tough because I don't have a recipe I follow. I just look, oh, that looks good, that smells good. So,
Like a Cajun.
yeah, just like a Cajun.
So now this is one that you normally find okra in as well, right?
A lot of people put okra, some people use filet. I don't use either one. I don't like okra in my gumbo. I think it's too slimy. But a lot of people do use okra because it thickens up your gumbo. And the same with filet. Filet will thicken up your gumbo as well. But I don't use either one. I'm adding in thyme. I don't measure anything, but I'm going to put in probably about 2 good pinches worth of thyme into there.
Once again, that chicken broth was 32 ounces, and her preferred is bone broth, not regular chicken broth.
Right, but I ran out.
We ran out, so we're going to have a double batch, one of each.
So now I'm working on bay leaves. My bay leaves are kind of broken, so I'm looking on some decent sized ones that I can fish out. And you're going to add 2 bay leaves in. And I mean 2 good sized bay leaves, not little ones. So about like that. I need to turn my heat down so we're at a good boil. Now it's going to simmer from this point for about an hour. I'm going to use some Slap Your Mama. And again, I don't measure anything. And I'm also going to put in some garlic powder. Now I do add salt and pepper, but I usually do that last, right before serving. And I taste to see if it has enough salt and pepper in it. Then you're just going to stir this in. Here is what it looks like after I've brought it to a boil. I've dropped it down to a simmer. And like I said, you're just going to let this simmer for about an hour. We will be adding the sausage here in about probably about 10 minutes or so. I'm waiting because the sausage is spicy and I have someone who doesn't like spice, so we're going to tone it down a little bit by waiting to put the sausage in. Normally I like to put it in at the beginning once I get the veggies all cooked. And the shrimp will go in at the very end, about the last 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, because it doesn't take long for it to cook and you don't want your shrimp overcooked. Alright, so this is approximately how thick that you want to cut your andouille sausage. And just a side note, if you don't like spice, don't use andouille sausage. Use just a regular kielbasa or a smoked sausage instead. But andouille sausage does have a spice to it.
This is going to be so good.
You're going to serve your gumbo over a bed of rice and a side of southern potato salad. Us Cajuns prefer to put it in the gumbo. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and let me know in the comments how your gumbo turned out and if you have any questions.